Welcome everybody, this is the Norwegian Lockpicker. Back to give an update on my challenge lock, their first challenge lock. This will be part 2 of the video. Kind of talk through my process here. I'm not doing a step-by-step and videoing everything that I'm doing just because it's really quite noisy and takes a lot of time. So I'm just going to kind of step through the process and demonstrate a little bit of what I've learned over the last day messing with this. So the first thing I did was I took the key and modified it and cut some deeper cuts on the keys to give it some more extreme bitting. It's pretty extreme compared to what it started out. I wonder how hard it's going to be for me to find the original keys here. Okay, so here's the original versus what I cut into it. That's pretty extreme. So if you're gonna do that, some things to talk about there. I use a needle file. Comes in a kit. I think I bought this all from Ace. So it comes with a nice little handle with a collet on the end. You can change out your files. And I'm using the round file. I clamp it up in a vise and just get set on the key position, and then just carefully take one swipe at a time and get it down to the cut that I want. And then I use a square, or this one's a triangle file, and you gotta work through taking the edges back and putting a decent slope or an angle on there without affecting the next key position, because if you leave it jagged cuts and stuff, you'll never be able to get it in and out of your keyway. So you gotta slope that off pretty good, smoothing it out. Even this is still a little rough. I'll do a little more polishing on that before I'm done with it and send it off. But you gotta be able to get it in and out of the keyway. Okay, so that was step 1. Decide my profile, key profile. And then I have to cut new key pins for everything. And here's key pin number 1. And this is the really noisy, time-taking process that here. Let's see if I can get it to focus here. Okay. Struggles are real. Not working. Oh, there, had it for a second. Alright, well, we'll move on. So, first of all, you got to figure out your length. So, I've been using my caliper, and I put the key into the core. Zoom back out here and make sure I'm zeroed out. Okay, and then key 1, stick the caliper in backwards here and get it down so it's on, sitting right on the key in the position, and run it down like this, and then take a measurement, and that should be pretty close. The first mistake that I made there was that's measuring the flat to that key position. So anytime you put a taper on your key pins, which is needed especially with extreme bitting, it kind of changes things. So what I was doing, the first pin I made was too short. So I took whatever that measurement was, and so far the magic number seems to me about 6 thousandths. So I'll add 6 thousandths to that measurement, and then that's what I do to cut, or for cutting that first initial length. And then I'd rather have it a little too long than too short, because then you can file down the pin just a little bit to get it to fit perfect. And if you're getting impatient and kind of rushing through things, trying to get done, the best thing would be to just take a break, move on, come back when you've got the patience to work with it. Because if you start going too fast, not being patient, taking one swipe at a time and checking, try and go too far, you end up cutting your pin too short, and then you're pretty much back to cutting a new pin if you want it to function properly. So what I've been doing, kind of laid it out in my last video what my planned process was going to be. I take my Dremel, lock it up in the vise, like so, and then I take my pinning material and stick it into the chuck on the Dremel like so. And then I was using this is just a cheap little dollar store clamp I found somewhere. I might have even gotten it for a gift at one time. I don't even remember where I got it, but I've got it, and it works pretty good. You clamp it up on here like that, and that gives you a guide bar to rest on, kind of like a wood lathe would be. And I'm not going to actually fire this thing up and show cutting, because it's really loud, and you guys probably wouldn't appreciate that much at all. So I started out using files and trying to cut in that way, and come to realize that the files fill up real quick with brass, especially when you're running at high speeds. They get hot, and then it kind of gums into your file and plugs it up. Now, if that happens to you, don't worry, your file's not wrecked. Get yourself a good wire brush, brush it out as good as you can. Some of the stuff that's still left over, you take a pick. I'm using, this is a dental pick. You probably don't want to use your lock picks, and you can just scratch this brass out of there. And a lot of times once you get a lot of it chipped out of there, then you can brush it away once you knock it loose. But I've gone through that process many times, but I wasn't able to get the detail out of the file like I was hoping, and it was really taking a long time. So then I moved on to trying saw blades. So I took some regular jigsaw blades for cutting metal. I tried one for cutting wood. Tried one for my Milwaukee Sawzall. I figured, well, these teeth are made for cutting into hard metals and stuff, and that actually, it works pretty good. You can cut a pretty wide piece on there, wide like spools and stuff like that, and then just cutting your pin to size. But it's always going to be that wide, so when you're dealing with a pin that's probably less than 200 thousandths long, you're burning up a lot of material by using something so wide, and it's really noisy. Once it starts cutting, it actually gets to a high-pitched squeal, and the dogs aren't happy, the kids aren't happy. Mama gets frustrated because her ears are just about bleeding. So then I thought, well, what else can I do? I don't have another second Dremel, so I tried just some Dremel tools and just holding them and running them in there like a file. That works a little bit. Takes a little bit. It's kind of cumbersome to hold on to it. I did figure out that they actually shank in pretty good on the handle from the file, so that worked as a handle to hold on to it. And these here little cutters actually worked pretty decent because you can run it in, put it up against your material, and then kind of turn it as you're going, and it cuts right up against the pin. That worked okay, but it still wasn't getting the detail that I wanted, because if you've looked at Lock Snoob's designs on pins that he's now Sparrows has picked up, and they're selling the check pins and the munitions pins and stuff like that, he really put a lot of detail in those. I thought, well, there's got to be a better way. And I know I seen a video, I can't remember who it was that I seen it, or I didn't pay a whole lot of attention at the time because it wasn't my primary focus, but they were using an X-Acto knife with a razor edge on it. So I thought I'd give that a try. And I think the video that I saw, he had actually taken a blade and he had modified it. I think he took a sharpener and sharpened it at an angle, so it was a little bit of a steeper angle, and sharpened it this way, so the back side of the blade was actually the width of the cutting, and so the point was flat and sharp on the edge on this end versus sharp over here. So, but I haven't gotten to that point yet. I think that might be something I'll try next. Just working through the different processes of trying to find what works. But this ended up being the most useful cutting tool, and you can actually cut the material away just like you would with a so while this is rotating, it's rotating into me like this. You can put the knife on there. If you hold it straight, it doesn't do much of anything. If you tilt it at an angle like this, it works pretty good. But I think ultimately what angle matters, I don't know if you can, it's really actually quite hard to see the edge of the blade, but if you turn the blade at an angle, I'll show it extreme, at an angle like this to the material, that actually is when it starts cutting. And then as you tilt it like this, it drives the cutting edge into it, and then you can get good control, and you just work your way across. So you start out with the shank of the pin would be sticking out this far, so I'd start over here, and when you're turning the whole thing down, I'd set it on there and then tilt and adjust, and then you can, using this guide bar here, you just slide it across, and you can turn the material down just like a regular wood metalworking lathe. That was actually working pretty darn good. The blade's taken a pretty serious beating. I've got to sharpen it up, but it was still cutting even at where it's at now. I'd have to work to cut my finger with it right now, but so that's what's worked out the best for cutting these pins, and you can put some pretty impressive details on it. I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit, make an attempt. The video quality will probably degrade here because I'm going to use the digital zoom. Get this centered off here, zoom in and see if I can get it to focus. Now I do have to recut some of these because these are my getting a lot of glare. Let's see if I can kill one of these lights and fix the glare a little bit. That's pretty good. So you can see here that these are my driver pins. These are my key pins. And I'm sorry if this looks, we'll see how it looks on the big TV, but if it gets really crappy quality, but hopefully it's good enough that you can tell what I'm doing. So they kind of resemble the check pins, and that's not by choice. It's just kind of, you're limited on what you can do when you're cutting in that way. But I've decided that this one here, I'm going to try and make this my signature pin. I don't know if I've seen anybody else doing something like this. I'm going to put it off where I can hopefully zoom in a little bit better. Maybe I'll actually be better off holding the camera. Bear with me on the shake here. Zoom back out so I've got good quality. Okay. So I don't know how, not sure how well you can see that, but there's a little ring on there. I put a lot of time into this baby. And a couple of failed attempts in trying to make this happen. But my plan is to have this actually a bigger ring. But this is actually cut out of the material. You can see this ring flops on here. I didn't magically press that ring over the bigger ends. I actually cut it in, so I started cutting down like a kind of like an ASA pin and left a ridge in the middle, and then as I was turned my knife and I cut in at an angle like this and cut it away, so now it's a free floating little ring on there. So that's going to be my signature pin on most of my challenge locks, I think. Figure out a better process in cutting that out and making it a little more detailed. I'd like to be able to control the depth here better, so it's a straight pin on there, so it doesn't flop around so bad, or actually can travel from one end to the other and give a totally different feel. But it's kind of fun. I don't know if I've seen anybody doing it yet, but I think it'll be pretty interesting to pick that way, and hopefully be challenging and giving different feedback that most people probably aren't used to. If somebody's seen somebody else doing that, please note it in the comments, and I'll give them credit where credit is due, because I'm sure, like everything else, there's no such thing as an original idea. Somebody else has already had that idea or tried it, but I haven't seen it. So, alright, that's where I'm at so far. I do have to redo a couple of these driver pins. They got too long, so I can't successfully put my key into the lock, because I think it's this one with the really long, one of these two with the long key pins that gets in the way, so there's not enough room to travel through the whole Bible and get the key in. So I've got to put a shorter pin in there so I can get the key in, make the lock functioning and work. I did put it all together, even though I couldn't open it with the key. I put my picks in there and started picking it. I got a successful open one time, but it was getting pretty late in the night. I was getting tired, so decided to give up and go to bed. And then I'll redo these pins to make sure that it's a fully functioning lock, and then I'll engrave it and get ready to send it off. So thanks for tuning back in, and stay tuned for more on making a challenge lock. Thanks everybody. Stay legal, and don't forget, if you don't respect the keyhole, don't stick your pick in there. Thank you.